Check this out. 98% of employees use at least one social media site for personal use, but only 50% post about their company. And yet, we know that a recommendation from a friend or family member makes 83% of Americans more likely to purchase that product or service. If word of mouth is that effective and businesses have a treasure trove of employees and social channels to leverage, why aren't they? What should that look like? Where do we get started? That's what we're covering in today's episode of Partnership Unpacked.
This is Partnership Unpacked, your go-to guide to growing your business through partnerships quickly. I'm your host, Mike Allton, and each episode unpacks the winning strategies and latest trends from influencer marketing to brand partnerships and ideas that you can apply to your own business to grow exponentially. And now, the rest of today's episode.
Welcome back to Partnership Unpacked, where I selfishly use this time to pick the brains of experts at strategic partnerships, channel programs, affiliates, influencer marketing, and relationship building. Oh, and you get to learn too. Subscribe to learn how you can amplify your growth strategy with a solid takeaway every episode from partnership experts in the industry. Now, I shared a moment ago that nearly every employee of your company has at least one social account, but that at least half aren't talking about your brand online in any way, and that's a problem, right? The solution, though, is a bit tricky. We can't force employees or our audience members to talk about us, and it's not always easy either. Do we send an email, a Slack message, tag them on company posts? How do we track whether they even do anything? That's exactly what our guest today, Rachel Stephan, is going to talk to us about. Rachel's an event marketing specialist, event tech startup founder, and industry speaker on topics that cover event marketing and influencer marketing. When meeting planners and association professionals need to get more butts in seats, they call Rachel. She's a force to be reckoned with, whipping up creative solutions to event marketing challenges for 22 plus years. Challenges and opportunities that apply to every business with employees. Rachel, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great and pumped to be here with you, Mike.
Fantastic. Let's get started. I want you to tell us first about your background and specifically the work that you're doing with Snowball and what Snowball is.
Absolutely. How long do you have?
We've got all day.
Years experience. There you go. So I've been in marketing industry for that long, specifically marketing events and conferences, mostly B2B. And while doing this, for all these years, stumbled on, usually when you're marketing events, you have different channels that you want to work with and try to get your message across to get more butts and seats. But doing that, we stumbled on word of mouth. Word of mouth, how does it look like in events? Is really getting the committee members, the people, like the employees of the brand in that case is the event, to also post and invite others and get them to come to the event, be aware of the event. And then we figured it's like, there is something there. How do we do this? And how can we scale this? How can we measure this? And the idea of Snowball came about that we decided to build a product, build a technology that self-served us basically initially to help our clients do this. And then we figured it's like, hey, wait a second, there's a need for it. There's an application for it for with other ones as well. So it took a life of its own, and Snowball became a thing that it scales and amplifies word of mouth. Not only that, it also helps you track it and prove ROI to your stakeholders and your partners.
I love this. I was so excited one of the first times we talked and you were telling me about what Snowball could do and all the different applications because in an event specifically, and for those of you listening, you could apply this to a product launch or a new service or whatever the case might be. But in the event specifically, you have a brand or an organization that's putting on the event. So of course they're going to promote the event on their own channels. But you've got the employees of the organization who could be talking about that event or product launch. You've got speakers at the event who could be talking about it. You've got sponsors and partners who could be talking about it. And the list goes on and on. All these different entities. And it's all boiled down to a kind of way that we do influencer marketing or user-generated content that we're talking about as word of mouth. Now, for those of you listening, make sure you subscribe because in a few weeks, we're going to have Jessica Phillips on the show, and she's going to be talking about relationship marketing and word of mouth and world of mouth. Because what we heard I like to talk about is how when we're dealing with a global audience, it's bringing in people from all different cultures, regions, time zones, and so on. So, Rachel, what I'd love to hear from you and your perspective is why word of mouth? Why is word of mouth just so powerful in the first place?
One word summarizes it is trust. You trust people in your life, you trust your peers, you trust people, period, before the brand. So that way, for any purpose, and you said it, it could be used for multiple purposes. We're talking about it in the perspective of events, but think about it that you have people, you have something that you want them to pass out as a message for a product or a brand or an event, and then you have a goal at the end of it. So the fastest path to getting someone to convert into doing something that you want them to do is when you build that trust, and then it kind of skips a few steps of the awareness, the visibility, and all that stuff. And then it's like, okay, if so and so is going, I already trust them as a peer, for example. I'll know that they probably made the good decision or they have a good reason to do this. So you already have an affinity to that brand or that event quicker, and then you're closer to purchase. That's in a nutshell word of mouth, the power of word of mouth, what it allows you to do.
Awesome. So we're either talking to events who've got audiences, the people who have actually already signed up to attend that event, or we're talking to brands who've already sold somebody on their product or service, and now that's a customer. And we've obviously laid out that word of mouth is powerful, it's effective. So let's get into the details, right? How specifically should brands partner with their existing customers and audiences to actually amplify that brand or that content or that event?
When we look at it, if in our world, basically, we don't try to identify one or the other one, or the ones with the most followers and all that. We consider everybody is on the same level of influence. So we try to leverage everybody. So when you look at it from your customer, from a brand perspective, your employees, the more people talking about your brand, the better it is as an outcome. For an event perspective, we consider every person who's attended, every speaker who's coming, every company, everybody has their story or angle that they can approach it to talk about their role at that particular event or their experience with your brand. So these stories are very powerful, and the volume of people who would talk about it will generate that buzz and create that awareness to bring them even more to come and do that with you and buy from your product or attend your event.
Which is why your company's name is
And it
Snowball, right?
snowballs from there.
Yeah.
They wait for it. Like the client usually they say it, and it snowballs. Like, yes, you got it. This is
Yeah,
exactly
but
it.
but it's so true. I mean, she's not just hyping up this concept. It is 100% true. I've seen this time and time again. The more people you can get talking about your brand, your product, your services, your event, the more social proof that you're creating en masse. And when people, individuals, you listening right now, you hear more than one person talking about a thing, that registers in your mind. In fact, it's so effective. There's a psychological name for it. It's called recency illusion. All of a sudden, we realize there's a lot of people talking about this. And there might have been people talking about this thing for a long time. But because of the recency and the frequency it happens in a shorter amount of time, that triggers an awareness in our brain. Suddenly now we are more aware of the brand or the product or the event. So there's that social proof aspect. Plus, I would say that as a brand, if you get your employees and your customers talking about your brand, that just lifts the entire perception of your brand as a quality place, which could impact your ability to hire your next all-star. And in today's hiring environment, that's important. So also be thinking about getting your employees to talk about your brand from that perspective. But
Exactly. I
my
mean, one
question,
example, Mike, just on that note, exactly
yeah,
for that, I see it, every day on campaigns we work on, specifically for event. But let's look at the brand. The brands are going to an event, so it's not the brand saying, "Hey, we're going to be there. Come meet us because we have a product or launch or a service that we want to show you." when you look at the data and the referrals that we have there, it's the brand, but it's the people, the representatives, or the employees who are going to the events. So might have 4 or 5 of them, and we see them, 4 or 5 of them, each one of them spoke about their company going to this particular event, and each one of them was able to refer 10, 15 people, 30 people. But for the organizer as a whole, you look at it, it's like, okay, this company, one exhibitor, one brand with 5, let's say, representatives going, they brought in almost over 100 people to the event. That's the compound effect of, this the word of mouth and getting people not underestimating the power of influence of each individual, even if they brought in one person. But you have an event of 1,000 people, you do the math.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because you kind of touched on this. You said, one brand had 5 people who were talking about it, 5 employees, and as a result, they brought in 100 registrants. What we're talking about is ROI. So there's an aspect with your tool, of course, which I'd love for you to get into, but in a broader sense as well, how can brands actually measure and track the ROI from these kinds of employee advocacy or customer affiliate referral advocacy, however you want to call it, activities?
It has to go back to the goal, whether you're trying to achieve. Is it visibility? Then you're able to track and see what kind of clicks and views you're getting on. Maybe you're driving them to your website to go discover something, a product or something on your site. If it's to purchase something, for us, we have to put a tracking code specifically on that conversion site specifically, so that we know that whatever they're talking about, wherever they talk about it, because there's multiple channels that we give them opportunities to share it, and it's up to them to decide where they want to share that part. It could be not even social. We talk about social, but in some cases we see it done behind the scenes. It's done by email, it's done on Slack, it's done in really WhatsApp, for example, if it's somewhere also in the Middle East. So these are important to keep a track of them, and then we track and know exactly where they're sharing it, and then how many people are actually registering for an event because of that. If it's a product and they're purchasing it, then it's also important to know that they complete that transaction at the end of it, and where did it come from and who referred them to go there. So that's one way also to get them maybe to incentivize as a brand. Maybe that's another topic, is that what else can you do and put in place to help them incentivize them to participate in this whole, make it a contest, make it fun, make it engaging for them to do that.
That's such a great point. We don't necessarily have to just assume our audiences are going to share whatever it is we're asking them to share. We don't have to necessarily even depend on them to do it of their own free will. We can incentivize them, we can monetize, we can gamify it. And I love that gamification angle. And I love that you pointed out that the very first step is to decide what your goal is. What are you trying to accomplish, and how are you measuring that? And the next step is to make sure that every single one of those links is trackable. And what we're talking about, for those of you listening, essentially are UTM parameters on every single link, and access in the Google Analytics side, and a conversion setup, so that you know when a link is clicked and you know what happened after that link was clicked. All that can be tracked. And in fact, this is something we talk about a lot at Agorapulse when it comes to social media. And I want to share with you a message from our CMO, Daryl Prale, on how you can and should be doing this with all of your organic social activity right now.
It's the Arc de Triomphe. Can you imagine if you're in charge, if you're the CMO of marketing Paris? What are your main channels? Wow, there's the Arc de Triomphe, there's the Eiffel Tower, there's the Louvre. Those are your channels you're going to use to drive tourism dollars in. Okay, now, but you're not the CMO of Paris. In fact, you're the CMO of your company, product, service. So what are your main channels? Well, I'm going to guess they're things like pay-per-click, maybe trade shows, events, maybe content. Those are all pretty predictable, right? Let me ask you this question. Are you treating social media as a main channel? By the way, only 1.8% of you today measure social media and can prove an ROI in that investment. HubSpot and Gartner say social media is the #1 channel to invest in this year. Are you doing it? If not, I can tell you why. You're not doing it because you don't have the tools, you don't have the mentality, and that's okay. We've got you covered. You change the mentality, we'll give you the tool. Agorapulse tracks all the ROI for you. one place to manage all your social media activity, your number one channel. Change your success. Treat social media as a channel, one CMO to another. My name is Daryl. I'm with Agorapulse. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. So, Rachel, this is really interesting. I love everything you're sharing. Can you give us a couple of specific examples of brands who've successfully partnered with their audiences? What that looked like? Challenges did they face? What did they accomplish?
Hmm. Well, the brands in our case, like I said, it's events, and some of the ones. I mean, recent one we just launched their campaign, and the event is about 2,000 people. Imagine that out of the 2,000 people, there are almost 500 referrals already with a launch that's less than a month away from the event, and that's massive. That's a massive conversion, and typically we don't see that much of it happening. Another one that we've done, which was on technology and education. And that one, at some point, that one, I've never seen anything like it happen ever again after. It was a unicorn, that one. The client flagged it. We saw like a one partner referral that brought in almost like 1,600 people to register for this event. And the client flagged it, sent it
Wow.
to us. Can you look into it, please? I mean, I think there must be something wrong in the tracking. So we dig deeper, we look at it, we go in, and we're trying to figure out like who is it. And it turns out it was an employee at Google, because it was Google Education who was one of the partners that's going to that particular event, that sent it by email internally and got almost 1,600 people referred to register to this event. Now tell me that word of mouth
Wow.
and referral doesn't work.
Love that story. And I'll just tack on because we've done similar things in the past. I have an agency summit that I run for Agorapulse every year in June. We'll be doing it again this year. And last year, I had, and this was very much cobbled together because unfortunately I didn't have access to Snowball at the time, but I prompted every registrant after they registered to share the event with their audience, and we tracked those shares and we tracked the signups, and I told the winner they would get a free year of Agorapulse and they would get free access to a VIP day that I set up as part of the event. So the whole event was free,
Mm.
and I made a VIP pass, and I brought all the live keynote speakers back the next day after the live event and did fireside chats with them that was exclusive to the VIP ticket holders. So I created the value out of that. And that was something we used not only to encourage the shares, I also used that as a tactic to get into different communities. We went to
Absolutely. That's
American marketing associations and other communities and said, hey, I'll give you and your community members free VIP tickets if you want to share them.
That's brilliant. I love it. And that goes back to the incentivization. I mean, you usually could start like at a same thing. Some people would do it just because they want to do it and then show off that they're going to an event or speaking at an event or in all that. And some others, they need a little bit of a nudge. So sometimes we look at, giving an incentive for the people to share it, but also for the people who see it on the social feed. Why would I register because of your link or yours? So you might also have a double promotion. So for the ones who see it and register from that one, they might get a discount or maybe get also entered into that draw for something. So it's really about coming up with understanding your audience and what triggers them, because in some situations they don't care about incentives, or they could be interested more like in an environmental impact. I've seen some of them where they donated something to a charity, or maybe they help plant trees somewhere, because with the volume, if the more shares, the more people talking about it, based on the numbers of people who shared it, that's how many trees they planted for
Hmm.
on behalf of the whole community. So it's really understanding what triggers and what drives and motivates your audience to take action and be part of the campaign.
Love that. I'm definitely going to steal that particular idea. So, what other best practices and recommendations do you have for brands who really want to partner with their audiences like this?
Hmm. We don't talk much about video also, and there's also video, so it adds a little bit more personal touch to that content that is shared by Call them creators, call them influencers, call them audience employees, whoever, the people. So allowing them and giving them an easy way to kind of tell their story. It's also a great way to do it. I mentioned on another event with you, Mike, also the Content Marketing Institute, that I'm a big fan of what they're doing also, because they leverage the thought leaders and bring them on social to do these little mini interviews ahead of the event, in this case, to talk about what to expect that. But not only the thought leaders, they brought in the audience members because they also have their own stories. They have their own experience with that brand, particularly, and then different personas of that audience. So you might have people who are loyal ones who've been there for a long time, or let's say loyal to the brand in particular. Some of them who might be considering going or purchasing that product for the first time, and see like what's their perspective, and then bring them on as a panel, have them discuss and share tips and tricks, for example, of what to expect maybe going to that event or buying a product. So that's an interesting way to kind of get them all involved. You just want to get people heard.
Yeah, and I love the idea of combining employee advocacy or user advocacy with thought leaders and influencers. So for example, you might be prompting your customers or your audience members to share a post about your product, services, or an event, but the post itself might be a video from an influencer who's also talking about your brand, product, event, services, and so on. So now you get this double impact of the personal word of mouth plus an influencer. Yeah, great.
The other thing also, in when you look at the influencers, when you're working with all your audience, basically asking them to share, you don't know who one of them could be or has a lot of influence. So with what we're doing and what we're seeing in terms of data, obviously we send it to everybody, thousands of people. It's like, hey, post this, share this, you're coming to the event. Then you wait a couple of weeks, and then you see who's getting engaged, who's getting the most referrals, and then the most valuable influencer or advocates in our world will rise to the top. It's like, okay, this person is getting a lot of people to register. Obviously, they have a good following. People are trusting them. There's something going on there. Then it's up to you to go, and now we identified the ones that kind of rise to the top that are getting the most people. So how can you now take it a step further and now create a specific campaign, an influencer marketing campaign with these particular group of people? It could be 5, 10 people that you can take it to another level. That's something that also, I know, Mike, you do a lot of that. So that's where, you might have also some tips. What do you do with those after?
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because you're right. You're identifying new potential influencers from your audience and your customers or your employees that you would not have known about
No.
before. We have we have a guy at Agorapulse. It's hilarious. His name is Aaron. He's fantastic. He lives in Southeast Asia, and he's on our support and sales team. And he's a wonderful guy, but you wouldn't know it that he's also a mega fashion influencer in that space. He's got millions of followers on Instagram
Wow.
and Twitter, so he's huge. And that's nothing to do with his job. Um, but that's something you wouldn't know unless you had asked him to share an event that we were doing at Agorapulse, and suddenly realized, okay, he just referred 100 times more people than everybody else. Why is that? Oh, wow, he's got a massive audience. And the other thing that you made me think of, which was hilarious, is that back in the Google Plus days, we had a Google Plus feature called Ripples. And it was one of my favorite features of Google Plus. When you shared a piece of content, a post, didn't matter what it was,
Yeah.
and other people started to share it, you could click on the ripples and you could see your post and you could see the circle of people that you reached. And then each share was a new ripple, a new circle, and all the people that they reached, and they got bigger and bigger and bigger depending on the size of their reach. And to your point, I wrote an article once called 7 Things Not to Do on Google Plus, or 7 Ways Not to Use Google Plus, something along those lines. It was a positive, but it was a negative slant on the platform. And a friend of mine, Dustin, shared it. And because he shared it, the VP of Google Plus saw it.
Oh,
And the VP of Google Plus shared it. Now I know it's not around anymore, and some of you are like, I don't remember Google Plus, but at the time it was actually a big deal. I had a 250,000 followers on Google Plus before it ended. There were millions of people using the platform, and so the VP of the platform to have him share my content,
Wow,
that was
that's
a
awesome.
huge ripple. Yeah.
That's a huge ripple.
So
And today in 2023, we call that snowball because what you just described there, if when people share, we see it in snowball. So let's say, Mike, you posted something, and then I register because of your event, because of your post. It's going to show me, Rachel, it's going to show John, gonna Joe, Peter. We're going to know exactly who came because of your post, and we're going to know that they came because of your LinkedIn post, and maybe an email that you sent and all that. And then, oh, all of a sudden Rachel posted it, and then I got Joanne, and I got Lori, and I got Peter, and all that stuff. So this is our version of the ripple, the snowball effect, I like to call it. So you get to know exactly what's happening with the message of every single person that you have in your audience.
love it. That is fantastic. So let's take it then from the other angle and talk about what should brands not do in these kinds of situations.
I think I kind of talked about it earlier. Not do is that not tap into all their audiences and
Hmm.
everybody who's part of them. Look at your past customers. Look at the new ones. Look at your employees. Look at everybody who your brand touches has the opportunity to play a role in influencing someone to be aware of your product, purchase your product, try your product, recommend your product, all of the above. So don't think that there's one way to do it. There's a lot of people around that they could be leveraged and tapped into at different capacity, different messages, different type of campaigns that you can get them to help you participate in generating and amplifying your brand, amplifying your message, and hopefully at the getting better conversions and ROI from these campaigns.
That's such a powerful point because it would be easy to just send the same blanket message to all of our audiences at the same time, but that's not going to be as effective. And taking the time up front to tailor that audience, tailor that message, tailor that ask to each specific audience will make it much more likely that they'll participate and we'll see positive results. So
Yeah,
thank you
absolutely.
for
For
sharing that.
example, like right now, we're working on a campaign with PCMA. You and I are familiar with PCMA, the
Mm.
Professional Convention Management Association. They have an event coming to Montreal in June, coming up. So obviously, they want to leverage people coming, the speakers and all. But not only that. So you look at it. Okay, it's coming to Canada. How can we leverage the members of these associations who are in Canada? They're not necessarily coming to the event, all of them. So if you have thousands of members there, this is an audience that hasn't maybe gone to the event or anything, but hey, this event is coming to Canada. It's a big thing. So we're creating a message specifically to those as a pride message, like, hey, Canada is hosting PCMA EduCon, check it out, come and register, and then let's hopefully we could meet there, but then it's not necessarily I'm going there. So that's a different kind of angle that you get them to do, but we have a larger audience now to tap into that will create some buzz and visibility about this coming up. So that's one way of doing it with people who are not in direct contact with that product, but they have an affinity to it, that we can leverage their trust, their community, and their peers to kind of bring us the results we want.
Love that. And I love that you brought up trust because that is so important and is kind of the underlying principle to everything we've talked about. Because without trust, you can't have powerful relationships. So now we're at the last question. And this is always my favorite question. Those of you who've been listening for a while, you know this is the question I ask all my guests. I never know how they're going to answer, but I have a suspicion. So the question is, Rachel, when you yourself have partnered with other brands or your own audiences, and just throughout your career, how important have relationships been to you?
I mean, I'm here today because of all the relationships I've built in the past. And it's about the people and about maintaining those relationships throughout the years so that when you have a relationship, you don't expect anything in return. You're always kind of giving in a way and providing value. and then it comes back to you a certain way. Sometimes it comes from that person. Sometimes that person knows someone who will recommend you at some point or work with you somehow, and build my business before Snowball on word of mouth and on the relationship that I built. And we've done well and have clients globally because of partnerships and relationships that we built throughout the year personally.
Love that. And you and I, we will always have a relationship that we know started with a game show on
There
a
you go.
live event. So that's fun. And we've gotten to meet in person events. We'll see each other again at a couple of events later this year. So that's fantastic. Rachel, this has been such a great interview. I want to thank you so much for the information and the perspectives that you're sharing. They're terrific. Tell everybody where they can learn more about you, where they can follow and learn more about Snowball.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike, for inviting me. And always have a good time chatting with you. We have both passionate about this topic, so I'm happy to participate. I'm always on LinkedIn. This is my preferred medium. Find me, Rachel Stephan, and happy to chat about anything marketing, influencer marketing, word of mouth, or just anything, hobbies. I'm an approachable person, so please feel free to contact me. And Snowball is Snowball, SNOBALL .events. That's our website. And if we can help you, happy to do so.
Fantastic. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's been watching and listening. That's all we've got for today, friends. But don't forget to follow and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. And if you would, stop by the Apple Podcast and drop us a review. We love to know what you think about the show. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Partnership Unpacked, hosted by Mike Allton and powered by Agorapulse, the #1 rated social media management solution, which you can learn more about at agorapulse.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player. Be sure to leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us. And if you want to be part of our audience during live broadcasts, take a look at our calendar at agorapulse.com/calendar. Until next time.